So Donald Trump is freaking out as the prosecutors are closing in. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So one thing the MAGA crowd, including Donald Trump, are very good at is creating a lot of noise and disinformation and confusion. But where you can't really do that is in court. Ultimately, judges and juries need to make their decisions based upon the law and facts. And if they don't make the right decision, they get overturned by courts of appeals. Well, recently, Donald Trump and his cronies have been having a pretty bad run in court. I mean, for all the talk about how Donald Trump was fully exonerated by the Mueller report regarding the Russian influence on his election in 2016, one issue that kind of went under the radar is that one of his campaign operatives, who is in charge of a PAC supporting Trump, funneled $25,000 to the Trump campaign from a Russian citizen. Let me make it clear again. For all this talk about how Trump and the Republicans did nothing wrong, one of them was convicted for taking money from a Russian and giving it to Trump's campaign. Period. End of story. The operative is Jesse Benton, who actually had been pardoned for Donald Trump for other campaign finance violations back in 2020. But it turns out he has so many campaign finance violations, you just can't pardon them all. Typical for those Republicans who are oh so concerned about campaign integrity, right? It turns out that Roman Vasilenko, a Russian citizen who operates a direct marketing firm and who is running for Russian parliament, wanted to support the Trump campaign and wanted to get a picture with Donald Trump. To do so, he gave $100,000 to Benton. Benton then turned around and bought a $25,000 ticket to a Trump fundraiser, which resulted in Vasilenko getting his wish, a picture with Trump. Benton's defense is that he had asked a lawyer about it ahead of time. Could he give this ticket to a campaign fundraiser to a Russian citizen? The lawyer correctly said yes, not realizing that the money used to buy the ticket had already been given to Benton by this Russian. So in other words, he was basically a facilitator for the money going through to the Trump campaign rather than just casually handing a ticket to Vasilenko. Big difference. The other defense Benton raised is, it was just $25,000. I don't know about you, but I don't have $25,000 sitting around. And we have to remember, back in 2016, the Hillary Clinton campaign had a lot more money than the Donald Trump campaign. So every dollar was at a premium at that point. The fact that now we have proof in the form of a court conviction that the Russians were funneling money to Donald Trump through Republican campaign operatives just shows what a lie it is that Trump was fully exonerated. And also shows, frankly, the opening of a whole new inquiry into Donald Trump and his corrupt campaigns and administration. In other bad news for the MAGA crowd, Oath Keeper leader Stewart Rhodes was convicted of seditious conspiracy. Now, if you were confused reading the headlines, so was I. They seem to imply that some people were convicted, some people weren't convicted. Let's be clear about something. All of the defendants in this case were convicted. Every single one of them. It's just some were convicted of seditious conspiracy, some were not. The others were convicted of other crimes. But the bottom line is, all of them were convicted. Now, what makes this especially important is the fact that Stewart Rhodes, admittedly, never went into the Capitol on January 6th. So his defense was, hey, I was just there as part of a protest. But the evidence was such that he was directly involved in the planning and execution of a wholesale invasion of the Capitol, which was aimed at stopping the peaceful transfer of power as a result of the election. Rhodes faces up to 60 years in prison for these convictions. And you have to understand, seditious conspiracy, that's about as close to treason as you can get. In fact, the last person who was convicted of seditious conspiracy was back in 1995, and it was an Islamic terrorist who was plotting to blow up a bunch of monuments in New York. I think it's totally appropriate that the Oath Keepers are now in the same boat with them. What's more is Rhodes was directly communicating with Trump and with his campaign, urging him to do things like seizing ballot boxes to stop states from counting all the ballots. This was not some minor player, and his conviction shows that everyone who was involved in January 6th, even if they didn't go into the Capitol, is in serious legal jeopardy at this point. To make matters worse for Trump, a U.S. district judge in Washington just ruled that he is not entitled to absolute immunity for interfering with vote counting on January 6th and before. This is the result of a lawsuit brought by the NAACP and one of my home state's organizations, the Michigan Welfare Rights Organization, arguing that he and the Republican National Committee had used their power to try to interfere with the counting of votes that were primarily cast by minorities. Trump's lawyers argued that this claim couldn't be brought against Donald Trump because he's entitled to absolute immunity as the president. After all, the president, when he's acting within his powers, cannot be held personally liable for actions he takes. That's the essence of governmental immunity. But in this case, the judge ruled that interfering with the counting of ballots had nothing to do with the duties of being president. Seems like a pretty obvious statement to me, but it's always a good day when Trump and his lawyers get stuffed by a judge. So now this is just one more front that Trump is going to have to be defending himself on. And with the appointment of Jack Smith, a career prosecutor, who, by the way, was the prosecutor who prosecuted former Democratic presidential candidate John Edwards, so much for him being some partisan hack. That's for the Supreme Court. No, instead, he's a career prosecutor who's widely respected as having been the head of the Public Integrity Unit at the Department of Justice, and who for the past 4 years has been prosecuting war crimes that were committed in Kosovo. The one thing that struck me about interviews I've read with people familiar with Jack Smith's work is that they say he's a man of action who will move forward and not waste time, and who knows how to complete an investigation and bring it to successful prosecution. Not surprisingly, Donald Trump is freaking out about this, as you can see from his recent truths that he's posted on his Truth social network. I mean, check this one out. This fully weaponized monster, Jack Smith, shouldn't be let anywhere near the political prosecution of President Donald J. Trump. I did nothing wrong on January 6th, and nothing wrong with the Democrats' fix on the document hoax. That is, unless the 6 previous presidents did something wrong also. Now, there's so many things wrong with this truth, I have to hesitate to say what it is. I don't even know where to start. But let's just remember one thing. Trump is the king of trying to create false equivalencies. The fact that President Obama, for example, has a presidential library that is overseen by the National Archives is nothing like Donald Trump taking top secret documents to his home in Mar-a-Lago and hiding them even after they were repeatedly requested and indeed subpoenaed by first the National Archives and later the Department of Justice. But setting that aside, it just shows how scared Trump is with this. I mean, check out this other one too. The so-called investigation of me by a radical left prosecutor who is totally controlled by Eric Holder and Obama is a rigged scam. Now remember again, this is the prosecutor who also prosecuted former Democratic presidential candidate John Edwards. So much for political prosecutor. The, quote, Justice Department and FBI are corrupt. In fact, offered $1 million to Christopher Steele to lie? I don't know where he even gets that. Told Facebook that Hunter's laptop was Russian disinformation when they knew it was not. Now, I need to step aside here and just point out, by the way, that the reason that everyone is concerned about the Hunter Biden laptop, which, by the way, has yet to be fully confirmed as accurate, is that Rudy Giuliani refused to share it with anybody, so nobody could validate it. But let's just keep going with this truth. And paid people to get Trump. I'd be interested to know what's the basis for that claim, other than just his own paranoia. Did nothing wrong on January 6th peacefully and patriotically. Kudos for Trump in trying to figure out how to spell patriotically. Or with documents. Check out past presidents. Again, his false equivalency claims. If there's one thing, though, that's totally evident from these posts, though, is the fact that Trump is freaking out. And you can start to see why. His whole philosophy when it comes to legal matters has been to try to delay, and block. But now it looks like those tactics are starting to wear thin, and Trump might not be able to stop the wheels of justice from coming after him after all. Well, if you want to see one of the more aggressive prosecutions that's going on, check out this video I did over here, where I talk about the prosecutor Fani Willis in Georgia, who's been moving forward with a very aggressive grand jury investigation of Donald Trump and his efforts to interfere with the counting of ballots in Georgia. Remember, this is the grand jury where Lindsey Graham was just ordered to testify. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.